Good morning. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I have got our regular special guest with us, Keri Vasek. Keri has come back to talk with me about math. How are you today, Keri?
Good. I'm a little sleepy, but we're going to move forward with one of my favorite topics.
Yes, even though the mornings are not your favorite. So, if you're listening to this and watching this, Keri is doing us a big favor because I've got to get on the road. And so she has agreed to meet us early to record this. So let's talk about math. Math is a subject, I think, similar to reading that sometimes gets a bad name and is it makes parents nervous, I think, teaching
I
math.
think
What do you think?
I think it gets a bad name more than reading does. I
Yeah,
think
I think you're probably right.
I hear parents all the time, like just the parents. I hate math. I'm not good at math. I'm um I would never be able to teach my child math. Like it's math, math, math. And like so it led me to like really start thinking about what's going on here because math is just a puzzle. um,
Do you
yeah.
think it well, what have you concluded in your little let me think about this?
So it's uh I think it's what we talked about with reading. I think it's largely the relationship that someone forms with math. So math is interesting because your brain literally cannot absorb certain concepts and certain because math gets very abstract the way we tend to teach it. And so our brains cannot always absorb it when school tells us that it should, right?
Right.
Um, but when we're in a standard curriculum, it just presses forward. But if we haven't grasped those base skills, it nothing ever clicks in our head.
Yeah, you're right. It's so much like reading that we say the brain can do it. Like the brain is brilliant. I mean, the brain is brilliant. That sounds funny. True though, but the brain can do a workaround. I mean, it can figure out a way to kind of get it, but truly you don't get it. It doesn't. You're right. It's like a puzzle. It doesn't truly go together if we haven't built on the foundation.
Right.
Um,
Well, and so much of the foundation with math that we don't realize is that it's math is very, very concrete. Um, but when you're just dealing with numbers on a number line, so 1, 2, 3, that is abstract. And I don't think we always realize that 1, 2, 3, that those in and of themselves are abstract concepts
right.
that we have to make for someone concrete. And so
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to talk about teaching math through play, because that's how we make math concrete. That's how we make numbers concrete. We show it, we touch it, we experience it. Then our brains have a foundation for what's coming next. If we miss that foundation, we miss out on the more complex, being able to do the more complex math later.
I agree. And how do we start? Like, I mean, I know how we start, right? But let's talk to the moms out there. They've got 2, 3-year olds, 4-year olds, and they're like, I don't even know where to start. Do I go buy a math curriculum? What do I do to teach math? And, I giggle a little because for me, I think math is the absolute easiest to do just as you go.
I
What do
agree.
you think?
I totally agree. One of my favorite things to do when I was postpartum depression, mom of a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and baby. That's not how old they were, but that was close. Uh, we would go and sit at Sam's Club to get out of the house. We would sit there, and I'd get pizza for the kids, and we would, well, yeah, the ones that could eat pizza would eat the pizza, And then with my oldest, with the 4 or 5-year-old, we would play the Sam's Club game. And I would say, okay, if there were 3 people eating pepperoni pizza and 2 people eating cheese pizza, how many slices of pizza are being eaten? And we would do things like that. And then as he got older, we would make it more complex. But it was things like that. So instead of just counting or 2 plus 3, it's again, put something concrete, put something
Yes.
that I can see with it. Okay, you have 4 pepperonis on your pizza. How many are going to be left after you eat one?
Yeah, you're doing word problems. You're helping them do word problems from the get-go and understand it in real life, like
Yeah.
math in real life and how it connects and how you can use it. I
Well,
mean,
and just to experience. So instead of just counting, which we still do, um, but instead of just counting, count things. So make piles of acorns and you
right.
count the acorns. And then um once that is going well, you might take sidewalk chalk and draw circles with a 3 in it, and they put 3 acorns in it. Because I was also when my big ones were young, we did not have a big budget, so it was, what do you find free? And acorns were very free, so we did a lot
Acorns,
of math
sticks,
with acorns.
leaves. Yeah. Nature is your best friend when it comes to math. I mean, there's so much stuff you can get out and count. Rocks. I mean, kids love a rock, right? Pick up the rocks and count the rocks. Even just when you're walking, going on walks, how many steps? Like you go ahead and they come to you. How many steps does it take, you know, to get to mom? And then they can start understanding. Some people, it takes more steps than others. Well, what if we take one step backward? I mean, you can do it. It's not like a mindset. I feel like you just have to get in the mindset of everything can be math. Like every.
And recognizing patterns.
Mm,
Like when you're recognizing patterns, you're prepping the brain for math. When you ask questions about shapes, you're prepping the brain for math. When you say, what do you think is going to be the fastest way to get there? What do you think is going to be the best way to get from here to there? They're going to figure out
excellent. Yep.
the straight line. That's a geometrical principle. Like is figuring out that the fastest way, the shortest way from one point to another is a straight line.
Right.
They're going to be doing that. You don't have to say the geometric principle, that concept, but in doing, they're experiencing it. So when you say it later, they're like, oh yeah, you know,
Been doing this since I was 3.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think that it's something that I would say that if you do it every day, if you just every day find a way to start incorporating those conversations, pointing those things out, recognizing that when you're cooking, they can come in and they can start measuring. I mean, my goodness, fractions are already happening right there, or math and science when you're cooking, right? Because they're starting to then pick up some of those concepts. What are some other ways that you have brought math into your home?
So again, with the acorns, when we moved into this house years ago, we we live in a neighborhood with tons and tons of oak trees. So hence all the acorns.
Acorns, yeah.
And we moved in the fall. And so we made this game up called Acorns, and we would gather tons and tons of acorns in buckets. And we have a drain across the street from us. And so we would stand on our side and throw them and get a point if you get your acorn in the drain. Now, the interesting thing about this is that, yes, we're doing the counting, the playing with numbers, all that, but you're also seeing what happens when uh you're expecting that acorn to bounce like a ball, but it does not bounce like a ball. It goes wonky because it's not it's not that nice symmetrical shape. And so they go all over the place. So again, they're experiencing that. Our street is built for floods. So it's curved.
Oops. Yeah.
And so they get to play with that. So they're playing with slope, they're playing with, and a lot of those things develop as they get older. But again, as they experience it when they're younger, they actually do put it together and figure out, maybe not in sophisticated language, but they figure out what's going on. And that's math.
Yeah.
And, but the biggest thing I would say from the beginning is we've got to get rid of the, just like my I hate mornings, which I need to, I've worked on changing that to I am made for this day and ready for the day ahead, instead of ugh, which is my natural tendency in the morning. But the same goes for math. Is that if we model a negativity and a hatred and a confusion and we bring our childhood trauma into us teaching math, into whether or not you homeschool, into math, when we bring that in, it is going to be difficult for your child to have a good relationship.
100%. Well, it's like anything in parenting, really. If we get to the root of it, you guys, what you model speaks volumes even more than what you say. What you model, and you might be modeling by saying, but what you model, they're picking up on. They're picking up on your take on everything.
Yeah.
And often that will lead to them forming their own views on whatever the subject is, whether you're talking about math or reading or the weather or politics or religion or whatever. They're going to pick up on your views and how you see it. And again, it's that playful attitude. It's something I say over and over, but I mean it so passionately. How we approach it. And if you can approach math with a playful attitude, what a gift you have given children. And you give them permission to get it wrong and to ask questions and to guess and to try and figure it out. All of that builds confidence in them and builds resilience in them to keep trying if they don't get it right. But if we fall into that, worksheet mentality of let me see how many you got correct from the get-go, we are not only going to be damaging their brain because they're not going to understand the concept, we're going to be damaging their heart and their willingness to take risk. So our attitude, I think, really does set the stage in so many ways for how
sure.
math is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, and even things like you don't have to love math the way I love math. But you can say things like, math sometimes feels confusing for me and I'm learning with you.
Yes. Fabulous.
See, like, it's okay for this to feel confusing. Hey, let's figure this out together. But this math is the worst. I hate math. Has to be the first thing to go.
Yeah.
And it makes me sad. It makes me sad for people because usually that's indicative of math was forced on you in a way that didn't make sense to you when you were little and you just chunked it out.
Right.
I heard once, and I have zero source for this material. I do not remember where I heard it. But I heard once that if you wait until the brain is ready for the information, you can teach a K through 12 math curriculum in like 8 to 12 weeks,
Wow.
which makes sense
Yeah.
to me as I've done this and I have uh, gently schooled math with my kids. As we sat down, like if I sense that like in when we're teaching a new concept, we just pull back. We're not in a rush. This isn't an emergency. We have time. And so I remind them like, hey, your brain will get to the point where it's ready. We don't need to stress about this. Let's go have a snack. Um, let's play a game. We'll address this later. And then I had a day recently where I sat down with my oldest and we learned square roots, cubed roots, squares, like exponents, um, squares, and there was another pretty significant concept that we learned in like one go, and it was like boom, boom, boom. It just made sense. He was like, "Oh, that makes," and it wasn't like tearing his soul apart and creating Horcruxes. So,
Yeah. I think that's kind of the answer to it all, isn't it? I mean, when they are ready. And it's funny, I was on social media and there's so many people who have opinions about that, right? Some really don't believe. They believe you do have to hammer it in from the get go. You got to start early. The earlier, the better. And you got to start pushing that heavy math early on. And they believe that if you don't, then the child will miss out. What's your take on that?
I think that comes from a place of fear. I
Mm,
don't think that comes from a place of confidence.
yeah.
Children are natural learners, um, and math is literally everywhere. Like,
Yeah.
you can't escape math.
Well,
There may
it's one
be other things that you can escape, but math is not one of them.
and so I would encourage you, if you're listening, to start, instead of avoiding that, start looking for that everywhere. What are ways we can teach one-to-one correspondence? What are ways we can teach shapes as we go? I remember at a conference one time I was speaking and a dad saw a curriculum and he was interested in this curriculum. So he walked over and asked me about it. And listen, I know I wrote a curriculum, but I'm not offended. I mean, there are different things for everybody. I said, sure, I'll walk over. He wanted me to walk over and look at it. And so we looked at it and it was a workbook. And this particular page I opened it to was a little mouse and he had a triangular piece of cheese and it said, color the triangle yellow. And that was the activity for the day. And so I just simply looked at that ad and I said, how long do you think it'll take your 4-year-old to color the triangle yellow? What, 2 seconds? I mean, most 4-year-olds, it's going to be a quick scribble and we're done. And so then that lesson is over for the day. So, what do we think the likelihood is that your child has grasped the concept of triangle by participating in this activity? Like,
Right.
first of all, you look at the picture of the mouse and the cheese and you don't even know what the concept is. As a child, you just think it's a cute little mouse with a piece of cheese.
Right.
Then I just said to the dad, but if you approach math in this hands-on playful manner, what are the ways you could teach her triangle? Just at home, just with stuff you have, and he listed up so many things. You can cut a sandwich into a triangle. You can make it with popsicle sticks. You can go find signs outside. I mean, think about all the ways we can reinforce triangle in the real world.
Well, and then
And
we keep paying attention to, so then we have different kinds of triangles, and we can pay attention to how long are the sides? Are they the same length? Are they again, when you're doing it in a gentle and play-based and part of life manner, you get to pull in these other concepts that you won't even be prepared for. Like, I think we're saying these things and it can feel like, oh my gosh, but what if I actually don't like math and I don't see the world in numbers and I don't
right.
whatever. Like, it's going to come. It doesn't have to be every part of every day. Find one thing, but also children will naturally notice things. And so if we can like go with it a little bit, yeah, that triangle and that triangle look different. Like, they're both triangles, but they look different.
Right.
What do you notice?
Yeah.
You just did geometry. Check. Well done.
Check. Well, and it is interesting that you said that because I do think often kids do progress quicker and they know more if taught this way, because often, going back to the workbook example, that was limited. That was limited to the little isosceles triangle. Um, and so you don't expand on it. You're not setting up the asking questions. You're not setting up the engaging. You're not setting up the curiosity. It really is a one and done, and it's very close-minded and close-ended. I mean, it's open book, color, done. Whereas if you get in this mindset of everything is math and teaching as you go, and allowing that curiosity and encouraging that curiosity, I think in the end, our kids are going to develop faster and our kids are going to know more without the stress.
Definitely.
Without the stress.
I was actually talking to my cousin, one of my best friends, who has a math degree, and is in a very prestigious math field. And she, I was like, I've been sitting with this. And I really think really all a child needs to go anywhere with math is just having math facts down. It's like, what's your thought on that? And she goes, and I was like, tell me more. Like, she just made this face. I was like, tell me more. She was like, I sometimes still have to count on my fingers. I was like, oh, okay, we're good.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, again, it's the attitude. It's the attitude about math, and it is literally, if you feel overwhelmed with math, it is literally just a puzzle. So we're just figuring out how the puzzle pieces fit together. Approach it like a game. And there are so many games. Math, again, like, I think math is the easiest thing to teach in just real life, just as you go. It's also like easiest one to find great games.
You have some favorites?
Sure. Some Swamp I like, because I also feel the way about games the way I feel about reading. I will not read a book, like a chapter book, like my bigger kids. I will not read a book aloud if I don't like it. Like, it needs to be a story that I like.
Right.
So John Michael, my husband, reads the Magic Kittens and things like that. I don't. I will also not play a game that makes me want to beat my head against a wall. So I find good games. We like Some Swamp and Sleeping Queens.
You love Sleeping Queens. That is the best game.
So good. We like Uno. We like Trouble and Shoots and Ladders. And those are some of the big ones for when they're younger. And then when they get bigger, there are others that we add in, but those are.
I'll put those in the show notes in case anybody's interested in that. So if you are a young mom and you're listening to this and you are like, what in the world? This is what we want to tell you. Or I want to tell you, and I'm going to let Keri. What I want to say is start slow. As you're sorting your laundry, let them sort laundry with you. Let them come alongside you as you are, putting away groceries. Talk about how many things you bought. Identify the number to the item, that correspondence. Let them sit and count everything. Let them, as you go up the stairs, you're counting the stairs. As you come down the stairs, you can count backwards. You can, just try and get in the habit of talking about it as you go and thinking, how many things can I do today that's math? It'd be fun. Make a game with yourself. How many things can we talk about in relation to math today as we go? And just see what comes up. I think you'll be amazed, from shapes to graphing to subtracting to basic, computation. You can do so many things without a curriculum. When do you think, well, 2 questions. 1, what are your thoughts on that? And then number 2, When do you think someone needs a purchased math curriculum?
My thoughts on that. The I would even add, instead of, before you even see how many places you can talk about math,
Yeah.
just take some time to notice when you already are.
Oh,
Because you
so good. Yeah.
probably already are, and they're doing it naturally. The second thing I would add, if you are tired, get your child some counting bears and some cups, and let them sort and do whatever, and lay down on the couch. Like, don't teach don't worry about teaching math if you're exhausted. There isn't a rush, and taking care of ourselves, I think, gets put like in a different, less important category somehow than this. And if you're exhausted, especially if you hate math already and it doesn't like invigorate you, take a nap first. um
I love that.
that's just kind of always my take is, we need rest. We expect too much of ourselves. If it feels overwhelming for you, like, notice in your body, oh, when I talk about math, I clench. What's going on in me first?
Yeah.
You have time. Like,
You do have time.
we're just we treat so much with our kids' educations like it's a rush, and if we miss this, if we miss 2 days of school, it's not, it's fine.
Right.
It's fine. They are natural learners. They are learning. You don't have to force that. They are doing it. They are naturally exploring their world. Um, so that would be that. Age for a math curriculum. I think it depends on your child. Um, and I think it depends on you. So I believe wholeheartedly that, like, people talk all the time about how a child learns and paying attention to how your kid learns, and nobody talks about how you like to teach. And that matters. It matters
So
how
much.
you like to teach. Um, so that kind of, for a while, that became the mantra in our house, and a lot of people say it's super selfish. But I had to change my mindset, and it would be, I matter too. Like, I matter too. And actually, I would argue in homeschooling, I matter more. Because if I'm not enjoying what I'm teaching and how I'm teaching it, if I am overwhelmed and frustrated, uh, and miserable, nobody's learning. So find something that feels good for you, that you're like, oh, I like these pictures. We've I know people who are dead set on, you pick one math curriculum and that is, like, do not stray from it. Okay. If that's your jam, that's fine. That's so not my style. I'm like, hey, what's working for us now? What's helping teach these concepts now? And when it doesn't work, I chunk it and we'll try something else. Um, so I think it depends on you. It depends on your child. Find something that's life-giving for both of you. Um, Life of Fred was a lifesaver for us when I felt the pressure to have a math curriculum, when I don't think I actually needed it, but when I felt the pressure to do that, um, because it's math as a story. But I don't. I, yeah, I can't. I have a hard time answering that. I don't think we actually
I don't know
need.
either. I mean, I think it's different. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And some of my kids want to do it. It's funny. Some kids are drawn to that workbook life. They think that means they're bigger. That's what I always tell parents. You think your kids are asking for workbooks, but often they're asking for workbooks because they see someone older doing book work, and so they want to be bigger. So really they're asking for pretend play. And so be careful not to mix that up. When your kid is asking for workbooks, be careful that you don't take that as a sign that they need pencil and paper tasks. They might just need some role play and some pretend, play in
One of
that.
our with that, we get at the beginning of every year, everybody gets a notebook and a folder.
Yeah.
So we do the same because we have a 10-year gap. And so we do the same for the little one too. He gets to pick out his notebook, he gets to pick out his
Yes.
folder, and then when he wants to do that, we open the notebook. And honestly, he's the kid that like he wants to do math facts work, and so I'll roll out a big old piece of white paper and write math facts because he loves it. But what I add to it, just because he loves it, doesn't mean, and just because he very much grasps the abstract. You've seen him.
Yep.
He grasps that, but I still do the concrete. So when I write down the math facts, I didn't remember this earlier. My favorite cheap tools are those dot stickers.
Yes.
The different color, like garage sale.
Yes. I love those too.
Colors. So I'll write, 3 plus 4, but the 3 will be orange and the 4 will be green. And then I have him put 3, like in after the equals, I'll make a box. So he'll put 3 orange, I think that's what I said, and 4 green stickers.
Right.
And then he writes the number.
Excellent. Yeah.
So yeah, so things like that. And I don't think workbooks are like from the devil. I just don't think they're necessary, especially in the younger years. If they are a helpful tool to buy you time to lay down on the couch and take a nap, use them.
Keri, do you need a nap? Is that what the root of this
No,
is?
that's speaking to my younger self.
So true.
Like,
yeah.
Sweet baby, you were exhausted. That's a lot of little people, and you
It's
didn't.
a lot of little kids. Yeah. I think you're right. And I think we think we're going to mess them up and they're going to get behind if we do that sometimes. And it absolutely is not true. I always tell the story of how during our adoption process of Joshua, I ended up having to move half of the kids. I mean, we went back and forth for a year, living in Guatemala, living in the US, living in Guatemala. We did not do a lot of book work that year. We did a lot of living. We did a lot of growing, and my kids got so many experience, but it didn't look like a traditional homeschool year. Are they behind because of it? Were they behind because of it? Not even at all. I mean, no.
So another thing that math is going to teach you is that behind is a comparison word.
Mm.
We we want to believe that behind is like this real thing that actually means something, and all it means is it only means something when we're comparing it to something else.
So true. Great point. Yeah.
Don't we give our kids that language their entire lives. You're behind, you're ahead, you're so far ahead for your
Yeah.
age.
You're so gifted and being ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we have we have grown-ups, we have adults, with all of us out here who are constantly comparing ourselves to other people and stuck in the comparison trap of I'm not homeschooling the right way, or I'm a failure because whatever. That's all comparison. And we wonder why we're stuck in comparison cycles, but it begins with things like that.
Yeah.
When we use
100%.
comparison language, whether it's in our own minds or out loud with our kids, where behind is arbitrary, it's not real.
Amen. Preach it. And we're going to end on that. So if you have questions, shoot me an email, Kathy@KathyEggers.com. You can DM us, follow Keri, Keri_Vasek. Keri, as we mentioned, is the author of Kisses from Space too. Not just a homeschool mom before, but she's a pretty amazing children's author. And so you need to check her out as well. We'll be back to discuss more of these topics. Thank you, Keri, for joining me about math.
Talk to you soon.